Hi, my name is Keith Bonner, and I'm the principal flutist with the Riverside Symphony. I was born here in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York. I went to conservatory here in Manhattan at the Manhattan School of Music. I then left New York City for a couple of years and did my graduate work in Cleveland at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And I started playing with Riverside Symphony, I think probably around 2003, 2004. Playing with such an incredible pool of musicians, to be able to show up at a rehearsal, to show up at a gig, to show up at a performance, and to sit among some of the greatest musicians in the world is incredibly rewarding. It's also very rewarding to be able to perform different styles, from Broadway to orchestral to opera to ballet to chamber music. I couldn't have dreamed of a more fulfilling way to be a professional musician. So I think one of the things that drew me to it was definitely that I knew someone, my cousin, who played it. And also, I had a fascination at a young age with Barbra Streisand. My mother played her albums all the time, and I felt like the flute was in the same range of her voice. So it seemed like a perfect fit. The French composer Claude Debussy was born in 1862 in the suburbs of Paris. He lived to the age of 55 and died in 1918 in the city of Paris. He composed The Afternoon of a Faun in 1894, and he based it on a poem of the same name by the French poet Mallarmé. Debussy was able to take that very descriptive poem and write a beautiful piece of music which features the flute. It has become one of the most well-known and popular flute solos in the repertoire. And it weaves a story of this faun and his experiences with the nymphs. I love this excerpt for its lush, broad, colorful, vividly descriptive characters and phrases as the flute leads the orchestra through the tale of the Afternoon of a Faun. In order to produce sound on the flute, I use my air, and the air creates vibration within the pipe. So it is most important when I blow into the head joint that I am blowing part of my air across the flute and most of my air into the flute. But the back wall here divides the airstream. So when I play the flute, I'm always thinking about aiming my airstream towards that back wall so it divides the airstream. And then when I put my head joint onto the flute, I'm able to blow that airstream through the entire pipe all the way down to here so that it vibrates and move many of the keys, and then I'm able to get different notes. There are 3 different registers in the flute. There's the low register, the middle register, and the high register. So in my low register, that would sound like this. And then I have a middle register that sounds like this. And then I also have a high register, which sounds like this. Another sort of interesting example of different sounds I can get on the flute other than different registers is something called a flutter tongue, which a lot of 20th century and 20th century composers use. So that's by fluttering my tongue. Playing with others, some of the challenges I find are in the wind section, I'm the only instrument that does not use a reed. So to find colors that blend with a clarinet, which is a single reed, and then also with the oboe and the bassoon, which are double reeds, presents a challenge. Just finding different colors to be able to blend can sometimes definitely get my creative juices flowing because we don't have a reed, so we have a different tone color, different tone quality that we have to work with. So I'd like to introduce you to another instrument in the flute family. If you go to hear an orchestra play, you'll often see somebody in the flute section playing this instrument. This is called a piccolo, and as you can see, it's much smaller than the flute I've been playing. So what do you think? Will the piccolo sound higher or lower than the flute I've been playing? If you guessed higher, you were right. The smaller an instrument is, the higher it sounds. I'd like to play a couple pieces for you today. The first piece I'm going to play is by a French composer named Maurice Ravel, who lived from 1875 to 1937. And this is from his orchestral work, Bolero. And the next piece for you I'd like to play is from the Italian composer Giacomo Rossini, who lived from 1792 to 1868. This is from the overture to his opera La Gazza Ladra, or The Thieving Magpie. And finally, the last excerpt I'd like to play for you is from Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream. This happens in the scherzo movement of the ballet, and this is the very end of the scherzo movement. This flute solo ends the movement, which is very sprightly, very playful, very menacing, and I love this solo too. It's fun to play all these solos all by myself, but it's even more exciting when I have an opportunity to play them with an entire orchestra. So let's take a moment now and hear what that would sound like within the entire orchestra. Is when an ensemble is able to achieve through its focus in a performance something that was not felt during the rehearsal period. When you're able to take what you did in a rehearsal period and then come together as a group and create something beyond what you rehearsed, something that wasn't necessarily verbally communicated, but you're able to communicate with each other on that stage in the moment in a nonverbal way and emote that to an audience. When I have that feeling, that's when I'm most satisfied, and that's when I feel like we've done a good performance. And I've had many performances like that with the Riverside Symphony.